Hello, Brubs. I know I'm all over the place with different subjects, but this is an interesting book. Well, I actually found three books from the Cotton Patch versions of, I'm guessing, yeah, they're modern translations with a southern accent of the Bible, obviously. And I just turned to a random page from this 1968 book, I think. 1969. And I'll just read a short little segment of Acts. What is this? Luke and Acts. I'm not sure which part of this is, but section 16. He said to his students, once there was a rich man who hired a manager for his business. Later he got wind that his manager was making a mess of things, so he called him in the office and said, "What's this I'm hearing about you? Let me have your accounts so I can see if you can be manager around here any longer." The manager went out and thought it over. "What shall I do, seeing as how my boss is taking my job away from me? I'm not able to do physical labor, and I'm ashamed to go on welfare. I've got it. I'll fix it so that when I'm fired as a manager, they'll still welcome me into their place of business." So he called up each one of his boss's customers and said to the first one, "How much do you owe my boss?" He replied, "I owe him for 900 gallons of oil." "All right," said the manager, "we'll settle the accounts. If you'll sit right down and write us a check for 450 gallons. "Okay," then he said to another, "And you, how much do you owe?" He replied, "For 1,000 bushels of wheat." The manager said, "Just write us a check for 800 in full settlement." And the boss gave the crooked manager credit for pulling such a slick trick. You know, pagan businessmen are smarter than Christians in conducting their affairs. So I'm telling you, get yourself some friends among the money boys, so that when you fall flat on your face, they might invite you into their plush offices to give you some advice. And I'm sure that went over well with Christians, so I'm going to Goodreads to see how it resounded with the reading public. Well, it got a 4.20, which is much higher than I expected. Reviews. An inspired, engaging, and cutting retelling of Luke and Acts into 1960s culture and life. And when I say inspired, I'm thinking of how the Spirit works in my own life. When I read God's words, He made it alive by showing how it applies to certain situations going on in my life and how to interpret the cultural trends around me. He makes the right path, the narrow path, clear. And in down-to-earth language, this is what I feel Clarence Jordan is doing through the rendition of Luke and Acts. So that woman seemingly enjoyed it. The particularity of the gospel story matters. Jesus was a first-century Jew, as were most of the writers of the New Testament. Take this away and the NT collapses in on itself. However, Jordan's brilliant transposition of Luke and Acts to the American South, Jerusalem becomes Atlanta. The Jews are the whites and the Gentiles become the blacks and Yankees, etc., is helpful. Having recently read John Perkins' memoir, and that's what it says, Perkins, not Perkins is, I get the sense that Jordan's work was exactly what Southern white Christians needed to hear in the 1960s and 70s. Jordan's transposition doesn't always work, and sometimes he admits this and awkwardly goes back to the first century context. However, this book will cause you to hear Jesus' message and the story of the early church in a new way. Jordan is a little-known hero of the faith, and his work deserves a wider reading. If you are a committed Christian activist, you are neglecting your development by not reading Cotton Patch. I'm wondering, I love this series so much. All right, so apparently Christian people love this. I would have thought they would thought it was a heresy. It is an interesting concept to put the gospel into present-day America. Down south, it is not a piece of literary excellence, and it did not shed new light of understanding of Scripture. Not sure really what to make of it, but thank you to the friend that wanted me to read it. See, Sally didn't like it. Sally thought it was bunkum. Another great rendering by Clarence Jordan. Like the others I've reviewed, it's literally the books of Luke and Acts from the New Testament, but set in a more modern time in the U.S. South. A worthwhile read to put some of the events of the New Testament into a new and more familiar light. Another hero, it is sad to me that he probably will never have his rightful place in the history of the civil rights movement. Was Clarence Jordan a black dude? Widely known as a dramatic and compelling speaker, is famous for having founded Koinonia Farm in Americus, Georgia, a pioneering interracial farming community in the Deep South. He and his dedicated followers have braved violence and legal and economic reprisals in making their colony a success. Mr. Jordan holds a BS degree in agriculture from the University of Georgia, a THM, I'm not sure what that is, and a PhD in New Testament Greek from Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Very interesting. Train likes it. I guess that's it. So that's very interesting. I just wonder if he was a black dude or is it just because it was a interracial commune? Must look into this guy now. Must look into him. Let's see what we can get. I always put this down so my personal info doesn't pop up here as it has before when I auto-typed. No, he seemed like a white guy. Definitely a white dude. He died on the farm. Wait, did he start Habitat for Humanity? Clarence Jordan was an American farmer and Baptist theologian, founder of Koinonia Farm, a small but influential religious community in southwest Georgia, and the author of the Cotton Patch paraphrase of the New Testament. He was also instrumental in the founding of Habitat for Humanity. He died at 57. All right, so he wasn't a black dude. Southern Baptist minister co-founded Koinonia Farm. Contacted Martin Luther King for insurance advice, reporting that the farm's insurance had been canceled. All right, so apparently there was no scandal there either. Or maybe other than the fact that he set up a interracial commune. And some southern people did not like it. All right. Well, that's interesting. Maybe I can add that to my reading list on this channel.